I'm now going to pass it across to my tuahine, Tuhi Ao, who's going to share some of her reflections on another marae project, or more a Pa project, Parihaka Pa, and the work that they did. Some years ago, a few of you may have already been involved in projects that were funded by MBIE around enabling resilient communities and resilient marae. So there were lots of different interesting projects and initiatives that had been supported. And Parihaka was part of that list. And also Manu, who's going to be speaking this afternoon, was part of quite an amazing project in Maniapoto as well. So let's have a big warm round of applause for Tuhi Ao Bailey. Hara mai te tuahine.
Ka mihi au ki te marae ki konei, ki te whare. Me ngā hapu e tiaki ana i tēnei whare. Yeah, lovely to be here. I'm going to rush through and not talk about myself, but just talk about the mahi that's been done by all the whānau out at Parihaka and everyone else around us supporting us. So I thought I'd start with this picture, because this is kind of where it all started sort of happening around 2000, back in the 2000s. So the little blue kid in there, he's now almost 16, so that'll give you some perspective. Clicker. The clicker?
Oh, here it is.
Might click in. Yeah, where did I point it at? Oh, yeah, so got it. So, so these are just some of the mahi that's been happening. So I'm going to kind of talk about them as I work through. In 2014, we got an exclusion zone from the oil and gas permit areas. Some of you might know we're now having to renegotiate that with this new government because they just cancelled it on us last month. So then we went into a project called the Taipe Tiki Tiki Research Project, which I'll talk a bit about. So I also wear another hat as a founder of Climate Justice Taranaki, and we've been doing some other mahi in that space on research and strategies around energy sustainability. 2021, we had a solar install at Parihaka called Herenga Norunga, Herenga Moraro. And then our marae went through the upgrades with the PGF fund through COVID. We did a Pa master plan, and we're now in the Parihaka infrastructure project stage and heading towards housing and health initiatives. So busy. If I just start with the Taipa Tiki Tiki project, this was a massive 2-year research project done under Massey University with some of our own whānau, and they looked basically at all the energy sources we were using on the past, so whether it was bottled LPG or it was firewood, electricity from the grid, our vehicles, stuff like that, and then they put up some like wind meters. They were measuring the firewood, they put meters in the river to check the levels of water and the flow and those things to see if we could do hydro. And basically what they came up with is that the best options for us is solar, firewood, and carpooling, and buses. So we've tried to head down that path. So again, at that time, I also helped author this strategy, which, if you're interested, it's online. This has kind of got the bigger picture of how to do carbon neutral transition for Taranaki and for the whole country, based on a whole lot of research and different projects that other communities are doing around the country. So I'm going to talk a bit about this as I go. This also led to another Māori Energy Strategy framework that we came up with about a year or two ago, which we've talked to some of you already about this. So it's just putting it into a framework based on tikanga Māori. But if we step back, so what we always try to do is, before we go forwards, we need to look back. So this is Parihaka back in about the 1870s, possibly, correct me if I'm wrong. This is looking down our Waitotoroa awa from Hipingaro Puki. As you can see, there's a lot of whare, and they're all made out of rākau from the area. And you can see that there's rākau that have been chopped down, and there's rākau in the background that are still standing, and even more behind the person taking the photo that heads up to the maunga. Most of those trees are now gone, and those whare as well. So yeah, when we talk about energy, I want to talk about trees, because trees were one of our main sources of energy back in the day for many reasons, for many purposes. So in 1840, a lot of the country was covered in trees, and then now, of course, most of it's gone. So this is a pollen. Apologies for all the slides. I'm a bit of a geek, so this is a pollen study of what plants were around since. Well, they've gone back to the year 1000 to the year 2000. So the black is the forest, and the top stuff is like the tussocks and alpine plants. And what you'll see is there was a lot of trees, and then Māori came and we chopped down a bit, and then we managed to stabilise for several hundred years and work out a way to live within the environment in Aotearoa. And then the ships arrived from Europe and other parts of the world and massively deforested the country. And they brought in exotic grassland and a different kind of economy. And also the towns grew massively. So now we're in a situation with climate change and our rivers polluted and our aquifers polluted and our people in poverty and homeless. So how to put that right? So one of the issues is that our people were forced into towns. And you'll see there's a massive switch around the around 1900. I know it was my father, he left Waitara around 1960, went to Wellington, and I'm the first one sort of back into the rural area. But looking forwards, if you look at the second graph, our population's about to sort of stabilise, hopefully, and we know our whānau are good at making babies, so our people are rising, which is good too. But you'll see it is dropping, so it's going to come down a bit, and hopefully through choice, but probably a lot of that will be through being forced to with what's happening with the climate and the economy. Yeah, so looking forwards, also looking back at energy use, so this is 1924 to 1994. Again, you can see like most of the power used back in the day was firewood. There was a little bit of fossil fuels being used, like coal, and even in Taranaki we had some oil here that whānau knew about. But that's massively erupted since World War II to unsustainable levels of energy use. So that big rising bit is what we need to chop out now to get back to sustainable levels. And of course, so yeah, as a climate change activist, I want to talk about emissions, of course. So these are our current emissions from Aotearoa, and you can see over half of it. Oh, so this is the older graph, but agriculture now sits at 53.4%, I think. So that's the immediate emissions from agriculture, but you've got the indirect emissions from like packaging, transport. 95% of the products go overseas, and we don't count those emissions at all. But yeah, so what you can see is when we're talking energy, we need to not just be looking at energy in our houses and our buildings or our waka. We need to talk about energy use all over, and a lot of it's being used for agriculture, and it's not really being talked about. Yeah, so so how do we focus? How do we sort out our emissions and our energy use? So these were the suggestions from the Productivity Commission in 2018. Basically, it comes down to getting off fossil fuels, growing our forests, particularly native forests, and changing the way we do agriculture. And we've added the fourth one, which is reducing our energy use all over. So that's kind of the way we've moved forwards with Parihaka. So if we look at vehicles and oil use, yeah, almost half of the fossil fuels we use are from oil for our vehicles, so we need to chop that out, and then gas. Fortunately, or unfortunately, we've almost run out. So gas in Taranaki has been feeding the country for decades, and that's about to run out within like the years on my one hand. And there is no plan currently coming from the government. So yeah, we need our own plan, which, as a lot of you are doing, we're doing that now by bringing in solar and building up public transport and those things. How's my time? Sweet. So you've got that issue on one hand, but then of course you've got the issue of neoliberalism, which is basically privatising public resources. So in the 80s, under Mr. Rogernomics man, they privatised our energy infrastructure, or a lot of it, particularly the electricity. And what you can see in this graph is that where the prices used to be low for our people, so residential, the red one, and commercial was high, they flipped it so that now we pay more than commercial users. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's generally what they did. And you'll see now with the government, they're talking now about doing that again with, is it selling off Powerco? Yep, so it can get worse if we don't sort it out. And just to plug this, there's a hui coming on the 11th, November the 11th in Pōneke to discuss this issue if any of you are interested. Yeah, have a look in the news. Yeah. So, yeah, what we need to do, so that's sort of a linear system where you've got the big companies owning the stuff and controlling the prices. What we need to do is shift into the circular system where you've got decentralised communities owning and controlling the equipment, oops, and yeah, making up our own prices. Sweet. Okay, so yeah, it sounds hard, but if we do that whole thing of looking forwards to what we want, but looking back at where we were and how we did get there, and you sort of plan it like this, it is possible. So this graph on the side is a graph that the transition engineers use to plan their projects. So it's, yeah, so you plan forwards and you test what worked back in the day and then you work it out that way forwards. Yeah, and it's working. So yeah, the other pictures here you can see is in 1900, horses were the main mode of transport, and then just by 1913, horses are gone, vehicles in. So change can happen really fast. It can happen in a bad way and it can happen in a good way. But don't think it's impossible. It can happen. Yeah, okay, so what types of energy do we want? So our climate group have done a bit of research and analysis on the different types. So this is what we came up with. So just quickly, so nuclear, nope. Yep, it's not a fossil fuel and it's not going to affect the climate perhaps, but it is highly toxic, highly dangerous, and often it's on Indigenous people's lands, which are already suffering. And only the rich can do that. Coal, heavy polluter, massive mining issues. Gas, the same, and it's running out anyway. Oil, the same. Offshore wind, as you know, there's companies vying for, is it 400 turbine windmills off the coast here. We don't support that, mainly because only the big companies can do that. It has a massive carbon footprint to not just build the things and put them there, but also to go out and keep maintaining them and replacing them every 17 years. And basically those companies want to do it to create energy to export anyway. They're not really doing it for us. EVs, so this is a tricky one. So yes, EVs can be good, but we don't physically have the minerals on the planet for everyone to have an EV. So it's not a viable option for community sustainability. It's viable for, ambulances, fire engines, buses, a few vehicles, to transport communities, but not every single person. And then wave and tidal, with climate change, it's hard to know what's going to happen with our seas. So it's high risk, it's quite expensive. And again, hydrogen, it's highly flammable and volatile, it escapes through the pipes, it's dangerous, and it's also, to create it, you put in more energy than you get out. So it doesn't make sense economically, unless it's funded by taxpayers. So the acceptable ones that we're keen on is of course solar, because it's not moving, so it has low maintenance. The panels now can last up to 50 years if you clean them every 6 months. There is a bit of mining, which is not so good, but if you make the things last, then it's better. Onshore wind we're okay with. Again, it has got a bit of a carbon footprint, but it's lower as far as maintenance goes because it's on land. And we can own them because we can access them. Firewood, yep, we've always used it. It's a good one. And we can always keep growing trees. It is naturally sustainable. Kinetic power, cycle power, yep. That's something that's starting to come through slowly with technology. Bikes is a perfect example. Biofuel, yep. There's many different types now, as long as it doesn't compete with food, and as long as it's not chopping down forests. And micro-hydro is much better than mega-hydro. So micro-hydro is just when you have a small system in a stream as opposed to damming a whole river. As far as storage and distribution goes, we prefer grid-connected, mainly because of batteries having issues around mining. So there's the social issues, social justice issues, and then there's the environmental impacts of mining. So you can perfectly do solar without a battery, staying grid-connected. But we do understand that batteries are useful for some places where they don't have the grid connection and for emergency uses. So particularly for marae, where you're a civil defence centre often, it's good to have some batteries. Tamatoki is actually here today, which is great, so I won't talk about his work. But these are just some good ideas of how community power actually helps feed into the grid and stop, it helps manage the whole country's energy use. So we're not having to use coal, and we can choose how to support our neighbours with our own power. Okay, 4 minutes. So for Parihaka, what we want to do, well, for Tānaka, I guess, is we want to grow papakainga. We want to grow the rural areas because that's more sustainable as far as having access to resources and food and trees. Towns can only work when you're trucking in and out the goods and the waste. And I talked about most of that, so I'll skip that one. So just honing in more on Parihaka is, so we did do this master plan, Te Maere Aranga Tuatoru, where we looked at where we need our marakai, where we need our forestry, where we need housing, and then where is it going to flood with climate change? And where are our places of tikanga around our marae, our urupa, those places, and kind of mapped it out. And then there's a bit of a commercial thing in there of how can we bring in visitors and run visitor trails to create some mahi for our younger ones. So yeah, that was kind of our basis. And then from there, so these are our existing houses. All the ones with yellow have now got solar panels thanks to the MB Endeavour Fund. And Minna talked before about another fund through Meridian that got solar on one of the maraes and battery. So most of our houses are done. We've got a few houses to go and 2 more marae to cover. So how do we do it? So being on grid, we did a thing where we wanted to make sure that we have power if there's power cuts, because we get power cuts all the time because of the lines there just broken, patched constantly. So you'll see in the second photo there's a switch at the bottom, so when the power goes out on the grid, we can just plug in the freezers of the marae, and we don't have all that rotten meat to deal with the next day. And our kuia can still watch the news or whatever and, charge their phones. We've also got things like in this picture, we've got a timer. So this is just from my house, where you can set the timer for your hot water heater and then just heat it in the day, and that becomes like your battery. So we can control our power use. Minna talked about this before, but we've had massive savings in our power bills. So like this is my power bill for winter, $54 in August, September, which is pretty good for a family of 4. And then there's a solar app. This is Solar Web, so we can track how power use is going. You can, be in town and be tracking what's going on at home if something's gone on or off, or if someone's left the heater on. Yeah, and so then there's just some little tips I just want to share. So if any of you got hot water heaters and know where the temperature gauge is, so often people, especially if you're renting, they'll turn it right up to 90 for some reason, but you only need it on 60, and that will halve your power bill. The same with curtains. Like, who shuts their curtains every evening? Yeah, awesome. Yeah, those all these whānau with the curtains wide open and the heat's just going out the windows. Yeah, again, that'll cut your power bill. And the same, if you've got a wood fire, use it to cook. So every winter we're cooking, we're heating water, putting it in a thermos in the morning for the coffee, and yeah, just maximise your energies. We've got the solar at Parihaka. But what we actually are working towards is building a community grid. So at the moment, with the prices for for selling, it's not really worth it. So we're waiting until the legislation changes, but we're sort of setting up the power grid ready to go. So we've been doing this massive infrastructure upgrade, replacing all our septic tanks, our drinking water, bringing in fibre, and also relaying power lines underground. So eventually we'll be ready to go. This has been funded again by MB, the Toy Foundation, and a little bit from Tindor at the beginning. That should be finished by March 23rd, hopefully. February 23rd. So, yeah, just getting back. Sweet, I'm not over time. We often talk about just the electricity used, but we need to be talking about, of course, the oil in our cars, which is the major user of fossil fuels in this country. So I wanted to talk about buses and carpooling. So who here's got a B card for Taranaki? Yeah, that's a very low number. So buses are one of the single most ways to reduce our emissions in the country if you're sharing transport with other people. And we even have 2 electric buses in Taranaki now. And the same with carpools. Is anyone part of a carpool? Again, same number of people. So if you share your vehicle with someone else, you're cutting those emissions. So this is just a snapshot of, we've had a kura, and it was a kōpai carpool since my kids were little, but just a few whānau around us, and we're still using it. It's just a messenger group, and it's really simple. And yep, we save money, save fuel, and our kids are growing up together. But so the last thing is korowaitea papatuanuku. We need to plant trees. So this is just a snapshot of our place in Pungaruhi when we first moved in, and then now. So we planted, most of it's food. So we've got about 5 little marakai, a massive food forest, and then the rest is just all natives and restore the wetland. But that didn't take that much work and not very long. So all these grey blocks are all the Māori freehold land in Taranaki. And then we've got all this Māori general land in Taranaki. If we start rebuilding our papakainga, planting our forests, planting our kai, and sharing our transport, we can massively get our emissions down and save heaps of money. And that's me. Kia ora.
Awesome. Hey, we've got a gift for you from our whānau. Thank you. So, questions for Tuhi Ao before she disappears. I think a couple of things I just wanted to reflect. Thank you for providing a historical, political and policy overlay for the energy situation that we find ourselves in. Here in Taranaki, you've obviously been involved in lots of different ways, particularly extraction of resource from your taonga. Many of your whānau have been involved in the energy sector, and then of course you have to pay for energy as well. So all of those things have its own whakapapa. And I think it's important because for those of you that are coming for the next 2 days at the summit, a lot of those corporate gentalias are going to be there as well. And so, again, how to move from being a passive user of power to owning your own power generation source, I think, is magnificent. So do we have a couple of questions from the floor from Tuhi Ao, especially for those of you inspired who are saying, hey, I think we could do that on our marae and our papakainga or our community. Any questions that you'd like to ask? Kia ora.
Kia ora. Just in regards to the residential and was that on commercial, how did you, when you done your marae, how did you network that?
Yeah, that was a really interesting point you brought up before. So, so we've actually just replaced all our big transformers in the Pa and getting in some new poles. And in that process, we were about to sign over to whatever kind of license they gave us. But thankfully, Kānahi Mā Whiti Marae had warned us that they'd got sucked into a commercial agreement because they didn't. So there was funding to upgrade the marae, which through MB made it geared it towards a sort of commercial enterprise for running wānanga, and so it was seen as a commercial thing, but it's their marae. And so thankfully they warned us not to do that. So yeah, we managed to negotiate with Power Co, I guess it was, to have just a residential agreement. But if we hadn't, that would have been thousands of dollars every year we had to pay. So it's really important to ask your whānau what are the tips. Yeah.
I'll just come with the mic, Matua, hang on. So you don't have to shoot your voice all the way over. Hold on. Here we go.
Ai, tēnā koe hoa. That last, I think one of your last slides, you talked about improving or replacing your infrastructure right across the board, premeditating a proposed legislative change in the future. Is that is that legislative change coming, or is that something you're hoping will come? You know what I mean? Is it in the schedule of legislative changes, or is it a moimoia that you hope some government will take up in the future?
Yeah, it's sort of coming. There's a lot of groups out there who have been working towards this for years. So the way that the system's set up is you have the producers of energy, the distributors, the retailers, and the consumers. So we're often at the end of the line and get told what to pay. But if you can be the distributor, there's also a different way the pricing works out. But at the moment, it's controlled by the producers who are the same, often the same and one the same, the generators and retailers. So until that legislation changes, we have to pay massive fees to become a distributor. So it's better for us to actually stay as the consumer. But yeah, that's who I was talking about in Wellington on November the 11th. It's the fourth of a series of wānanga by different people fighting for this. So that's the place really to go to see how to push that legislation. The Labour government were heading that way, but the new government's not. Well, maybe. Yeah.
Tuhi Ao, you mentioned, which I think is quite frightening in many ways, that energy, that particular source of energy is going to run out within this amount of time. Yeah. And so part and parcel of the ideas and the tips that you've shared around what whānau can do, are there any kind of calls to action that you would put forward for whānau to prepare themselves? Because it's not just going to happen here in Taranaki. I'm pretty certain that's going to happen all over the place. But do we need to be speeding up our strategising and our approaches to becoming distributors of the circular document that you shared on your slide was where we are becoming the distributors of microgrids, peer-to-peer sharing of power. Is that the best idea for us to prepare for what this future is going to look like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just one thing for marae is stop getting gas installations because you're going to be replacing that in 5 years' time. Stop buying new cars unless it's an EV, or get a B card. And advocate for public transport because it takes a lot of work, especially with this new council we've got. They want to pull that out. So push hard. But yeah, as far as community grids go, that's a bigger, more expensive thing that you really got to have a strategy and work with your iwi and your hapu to make that happen, because it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah.
Any other part-time before we close off? One more. Kia ora, Marissa.
Oh, yeah, I can. Yep. I'm not quite sure how, but...
Yep, the team will share them out afterwards, so that's awesome. All right, whānau, ho mai te paki. Whew.